This is just what we desire. In addition to hyperinsulinemia and hyperamino acid states, there is a solid, concrete, narrow, acute increase in muscle protein synthesis and anabolism. I'll give you a little guide on this. Taking just 1,000–2,000 milligrams of fish oil is what I would advise. Not much, including your post-workout protein or smoothie. Additionally, if you're feeling particularly adventurous, take a couple omega-3 capsules or something protein-rich with every meal you eat. You can raise your sensitivity to protein in a variety of ways so that you can increase protein synthesis, become more anabolic, and gain more lean tissue without necessarily consuming more protein. So let's start with the first one. I'll provide you the actual items, the actions you need to take, and a small playbook so you have a framework to work within. Unbelievably, the first one is a particular kind of cardio. We now examine a study that was published in Sports Medicine in 2022. It was a systematic review. Thus, it examined a wide range of literature. It was more than a single study. 4 distinct forms of protein production were examined. They examined both mixed and myofibrillar, which is the muscle's pure protein production. Alright. Additionally, they examined cycloplasmic and mitochondrial protein production. They discovered that aerobic or mild interval cardio appeared to raise mTOR and enhance total protein synthesis at a mixed level, with myofibrillar levels showing the greatest rise. Contrary to popular belief, cardio appears to be catabolic, yet it really activates pathways that increase our sensitivity to protein. Therefore, you may really get by with a little less protein if you engage in some high-intensity interval exercise. Why might this be occurring mechanistically then? In light of this, we examine other research that contends that repetitive contractions, that is, jogging and aerobic exercise, move the muscle through eccentric and concentric contractions more frequently than resistance training. Numerous cascades are set off by these repetitive contractions. It lowers what is known as myostatin to start. If you've ever seen Belgian blue cows, they resemble those completely jacked animals. It appears absurd. They are deficient in myostatin. Myostatin functions as a kind of governor on the amount of muscle we can develop. Therefore, you can raise mTOR and possibly gain more muscle if you decrease myostatin. This has been observed with some types of cardiac. Additionally, you have an increase in PGC1A, which causes new mitochondria to develop. More mitochondria result in more ATP and fewer reactive oxygen species, which improves recovery and power while also freeing up more energy for protein synthesis. What then should I recommend? I advise doing 20 minutes of light, high-intensity interval training following your resistance exercise. It's almost counterintuitive, yet in this situation you don't want to push yourself to the limit. Try interval training at a 70% to 80% intensity. A couple days a week, try a work-to-rest ratio of 1:2. It's definitely wise to note that protein will still be the most crucial factor before moving on to the note on protein. You will therefore always benefit more from increasing your protein intake, regardless of what you do on this list to boost protein synthesis. Next, let's move on to omega-3s. This is what I believe to be possibly the most anabolic food available. Aside from protein, which includes omega-3 fatty acids, listen to me because I'm going to give you a playbook on this as well. An intriguing study was published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. Alright? Participants in the 8-week study received either maize oil or omega-3 fatty acids. They discovered that corn oil had no effect at all on muscle protein synthesis or anabolic signaling. Therefore, it had no impact there. Nothing anabolic was done. It was nothing more than oil. Neither baseline anabolism nor baseline protein synthesis were affected by the omega-3s. But here's the thing. Omega-3s only stimulated anabolic signaling and protein synthesis when scientists employed a device known as a clamp to induce a hyperinsulinemia or hyperamino acid state, which is characterized by high levels of both insulin and amino acids. Join our diabetes health community and take control of your health with confidence. By hitting subscribe and like, you'll receive daily, easy-to-follow health solutions focused on blood sugar control, healthy habits, and long-term wellness. Stay informed, stay empowered, and move toward a healthier, more balanced life, one smart step at a time. In English, what does this mean? This means that when it's most crucial, omega-3 fatty acids like fish oil, eating sardines, or similar foods actually boost your protein synthesis. Insulin levels are elevated when there is protein in the body because, yes, protein causes insulin rises. This is just what we desire. In addition to hyperinsulinemia and hyperamino acid states, there is a solid, concrete, narrow, acute increase in muscle protein synthesis and anabolism. I'll give you a little guide on this. I would suggest taking a small amount of fish oil, between 1,000 and 2,000 milligrams, along with your post-workout protein or shake. Additionally, if you're feeling particularly adventurous, take a couple omega-3 capsules or something protein-rich with every meal you eat. You should concentrate on electrolytes and your mineralization regardless of the type of diet you're following, especially if you're following a more low-carb diet. Thus, I've included a link to a variety pack of element electrolytes that includes their primary tastes at no cost with any purchase. In this manner, you can either hoard it for yourself or donate it to a buddy. Additionally, they have these excellent, ready-to-drink effervescent drinks. There is anything similar to a soda substitute. Therefore, if all you want is a low-calorie or zero-calorie beverage that tastes like a Coke and contains 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium, a supplement comes next. All right, vitamin D, but listen to me once more on how to take and dose it. You may already be aware of it. It's vitamin D, but to comprehend it, we need to read some interesting literature. Thus, Molecular Metabolism published this study. It has 2 arms, which makes it an intriguing study. 2 arms, just like me. It also had humans in one arm and rats in the other. The rats had the ability to do strange, bizarre things. They actually grew more sensitive to vitamin D when they overexpressed the genes for a vitamin D receptor, but they also developed more muscle and increased protein synthesis. These people had 20 weeks of resistance training in the other arm. Additionally, scientists discovered that this expressed more receptors for vitamin D. Thus, with intense exercise, individuals were able to obtain more vitamin D. Their mTOR response, anabolic signaling, and hypertrophic muscle growth all increased with the number of vitamin D receptors. On the one hand, by observing the rats, we were able to comprehend the mechanism. However, we were aware of how resistance training may be combined with vitamin D. To determine how much we should consider taking, however, let's examine further data. The journal Oxidative Medicine and Cellular Longevity published this study. Participants who were atrophying due to low back pain were given vitamin D supplements. The other groups were either deficient in vitamin D or had baseline regular vitamin D levels without supplementation. Only the supplemented vitamin D group appeared to have lower FOX3 levels and an increase in AKT protein content. Therefore, even if we don't have a definitive answer, we can suggest that taking 2,500-3,500 IU of vitamin D supplements together with some of these other things could be quite beneficial, particularly if you're low. One of my favorite saunas is this one. And before you actually switch it off, remember that I don't even have access to this. Allow me to clarify a few points. Don't stop watching this video, it's a sauna. Alright, have a look at this. In this study, which was published in the journal Health, participants engaged in 24 sauna or 24 light aerobic interval sessions throughout a 10-week period. The cardiorespiratory success of both groups was comparable. For example, their respiration, lungs, and heart all benefited. Alright, the two are comparable. While one worked out, the other just sat in a stuffy sauna. However, the only group that experienced an increase in muscle mass was the sauna group. As in, what the hell? In 10 weeks, we're talking about going from 63.4 kilojoules to 65.8 kilojoules. By simply sitting in a sauna rather than doing cardio, you can gain lean body mass and real muscle mass. Even while I adore exercise, this could be very exciting news for others. Therefore, having a sauna is not necessary. Investing in one is definitely preferable to buying something you don't need. A sauna, in my opinion, is a much better investment than some of the frivolous items that people buy. However, you can also accomplish this by taking a hot bath. Alright, this will still raise HSP70, the heat shock proteins linked to this possible increase in muscle protein synthesis. How would you administer this then? Twice a week. All we're requesting is that. We observed 24 sessions in this 10 study. So, 2 times a week for the most part, and perhaps 3 times a week for a few weeks. After working out, take a hot bath, eat some protein, and spend 20 to 30 minutes in the sauna at some time during the day. The final and most crucial one is magnesium. 200 to 800 milligrams of magnesium. Do you want to hear about the research? Excellent. Come on. Higher serum magnesium levels were linked to decreased inflammation, increased muscle hypertrophy, and most importantly, a significant difference in leg power production, according to a larger study published in Bone and Mineral Research. Therefore, we do know from other literature that muscular output increases when CRP levels and inflammation are reduced. You're more explosive. As a signal for the creation of muscle proteins, this is excellent. Other than that, it tells us very little. According to a 2021 study that was published in Bone, mice with adequate or higher levels of magnesium had higher muscle protein synthesis and a higher mTOR response. And the main reason for this was, guess what? The decrease in inflammation. Finding your tolerated upper intake is what I advise you to do when taking magnesium. I take dimagnesium malate, which has a longer lasting release. I up my dosage, and I raise it even further if I'm exercising or working out more. The release of dimagnesium malate is sluggish. I won't run to the bathroom with diarrhea if I increase my dosage excessively. Perhaps my stools are looser. Alright, so that teaches me that I need to reduce the dosage a little bit, but I'm not experiencing the kind of severe disruption to my life that would occur if you increased the amount of citrate or magnesium oxide. Therefore, try a slightly slower malate or glycinate. Try a chelated form, and I would go as high as you can until you feel like you're only experiencing diarrhea and don't think it's working. Avoid diarrhea now, but keep an eye out for loose, chelated stools. Although it may seem excessive, I believe that 400 is probably a healthy dosage that people could take. I'm not a doctor, though. On the internet, I'm a bro. Keep it locked here in my channel as always. Tomorrow, I'll see you.